Hi, and welcome to Web Piano Academy. Today we will have as a guest Sam Reti, CEO and founder of Muzie.live. It all started from a college project where Sam and his dad began creating their first software together. I want to practice, which is the problem that many students have, right? Essentially, this is a practice app for musicians. Sam was awarded the achievement. This is a practice app for musicians. It's awesome. So Sam was awarded the Achievement Scholarship for his innovation and dedication to father and son's duo's first project together. After graduating from Berklee, Sam spent his time teaching guitar and continued building innovative tools in music technology with his father. In 2019, and I think that started with the pandemic, and then Sam can confirm that, they started working on Muzie.live, an all-in-one virtual music studio for online music lessons and hybrid learning. Today, Muzie.live continuously leads the industry in innovation to improve virtual learning and enhance music education. With just over 2 years since the official launch, Muzie.live has grown to over 40 countries globally and hosts thousands of lessons per week. So, and let's welcome Sam. Let's add him to the stream. Let's put this down just a second. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure. So, is it true that you started this kind of basically with the pandemic, right?
So it's right before the pandemic, and there were some really weird circumstances. So in 2019, we started building Muzie.live, but
Right.
what Muzie.live was actually supposed to be was an online tutoring platform for music students, so that you could go on the platform and you could request a teacher, and then a real teacher would be there instantly for you to take a lesson with in real time.
Right.
So that was really cool. And we built that in 2019, and we launched it on January 10th of 2020. So for the first month, and maybe first month or two, it was doing really well. We had hundreds of teachers sign up, and it was great.
I did too.
Yep. And then basically we had teachers, students requesting those lessons, but then as the pandemic sort of everyone became more aware of it in February and early March.
Right.
All of our teachers who were on the platform were asking if there was any way to also include their own students instead of just using it for tutoring other people.
Right.
So that was a pretty clear solution. So the next thing we did was we put it in so that your students could also sign up, and you could do both tutoring and teach your own students. We quickly put the tutoring stuff to the side. It wasn't during the pandemic. It became very much a side issue for people. There weren't that many people looking for more tutoring sessions.
Right. Yes.
Everybody was already online tutoring everything, so that wasn't really the best idea. So we put that away, and have since been working exclusively on building Muzie as a virtual school for you and your students. And so it's sort of happened before the pandemic, but took a wild turn because of the pandemic.
Yes, of course. Yes, I think the pandemic sort of might have helped your project develop a little bit faster, right?
Yeah. Definitely. I hate to say it because it is kind of it's not the best thing. But one of the things that's funny is we've really been in business since 2015, 2016. And we've been around doing our thing. We've been making software for music teachers. And our original I Want to Practice was practice software that turned into basically a lesson management tool for teachers. And we did that, but it never hit like Muzie did. And obviously, I think the pandemic was the spark that really pushed us forward. I think our original idea was pretty cool, but I think that what we're doing now is honestly just so much more important with engaging students and creating the best quality lessons that you can possibly give.
Awesome.
So I enjoy it.
Let's step a little bit back. So you started working on a project for the university, right? with
Yes.
your dad, which is unusual, right?
Yeah.
So
So
is your dad a software engineer or?
yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
he was also a professional musician.
Oh,
So
that's a perfect.
yeah, so we have sort of we're very lucky. We have a very fortunate setup over here. That not many people are able to do, what we're doing, just because it's the team I have is really me and my dad. And he was a professional drummer in the 80s and a software developer since then. And so he's
Yeah.
got 40 years of software development and understands the music world. And then I'd gone to Berklee and done everything music, done music courses and everything. And in my final year at school, they started something called the entrepreneurship
Mhm.
department. And
Yeah.
so they were really trying to spur innovation and have students come up with projects. So I went
Actually,
in.
I must add that this is a trend, right? Because I heard that also. I think at Yale they have
Yeah,
a program like that. I did personally a program at the University of Buffalo, but
yeah,
how to start your own company, how to launch your
absolutely.
company, how to be an entrepreneur. It was
Yep.
not specifically for musicians, but I mean, I took the entire year of classes, and it helps a lot to
Oh,
really
absolutely.
kind of considering the music as a business too,
Yes,
not just like this.
a hundred
I'm the
percent.
artist, and I'm kind of just like playing the music. Yeah, good, but I have to eat too, so I have to try to make money and make a living out of that too. So yeah, it helps a
Absolutely.
lot.
A
Yes,
hundred percent. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of music schools have been lacking, is having a
yes.
really good foundation in what it is like to really run a business. Because
Uh,
they'll and yeah, Berklee, when they added this department, they were putting the cool thing is they hired in some professors from MIT and Berklee.
right.
So it was a mix of like really intellectual, high level technical professors, and
Right.
then musicians and professors who have also built companies and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was really cool while I was there, we worked on this project. For the first couple months, it was just a theory. It was just a prototype. I made a prototype of it out of slide cards on like a PowerPoint. And
Right.
basically you could do everything the product needed to do, but you were just clicking through a slideshow basically. Um,
Yes.
and I submitted that as my sort of proposal to the class, and they thought it was really cool. And I showed it to my dad, and he was like, "Hey, that's actually pretty neat. I could probably make you like a prototype of that,
That's
in
really
like
awesome. Like
yeah,
usually parents say, "Well, I will bring you to a
yeah,
football
right.
game, or I make you a cake or something."
Oh,
But
this
your dad just made
oh
a software for you.
yeah, it gets better than that. He's done it more than once now. So and yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's a one-time opportunity. I'm just
Right?
incredibly fortunate to be where I am, especially with a dad that is both a musician and a very skilled software developer. So
Yeah.
he literally built the prototype in like a
What's
week.
your dad's name? Because we never
Carl.
mentioned him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he built the prototype basically in a week and had the first like kind of mock up ready to go. And I showed it to the professors, and they were like, "Whoa, we didn't expect anyone to actually build anything. We
Right.
were sort of like, this is all theoretical." And I was like, "Oh no, I wanted this to be like application so that I could
Yeah.
actually have a business when I get out of here."
Right.
And
Yes.
they were like, "Okay, cool, like run with it." And so for the first year, for that last year of college, I kept building the product, and every week I'd go into class and show them what we had done, and they would give us feedback. And so that was really, really helpful. And some of the
Yeah.
people that were giving me feedback were like Victor Wooten, the CEO of Puma and Nike, and like the guy that invented Avid Pro Tools. So
Yeah.
like really interesting people. They'd bring in all these awesome guest speakers and have this 3-hour class. It was absolutely fantastic. And then when I graduated, we kept running the business.
Right.
And because of that class, Berklee actually became the first customer for that product. And we
Hmm.
had the bass department using it, and everybody, and that sort of got us, sort of moving and understanding what, how software in the music world
Yeah.
really worked. And yeah, we just kept going from there and ended up where we are now.
That's awesome. So how was this app working? So
Yeah,
what did you do? How did you use
yeah.
it?
So basically, what it was is, so while I was at college, in my first 2 years of college, I played in a band.
Hmm.
And we were doing pretty, releasing albums and playing tours and getting invited out to festivals and things like that. And so that was going really, really well. And then that fell apart all in the middle of college. And so I had no idea what to do with myself. So I was like
many
okay.
musicians at one point, just
Right?
like, I don't know.
Like, uh-oh, like, what do I do now? So I basically went in and just started coming up with different ideas. And one thing I realized is I was having a lot of trouble keeping up with all of my coursework, plus everything I wanted to try and work on now. And so what I did is the app was essentially a organizer for college students. So you would go into the app and you'd say, I need to work on my major chords. I need to work on my like Phrygian scales. I need to work on, and you could be as specific as you wanted or as high level as you wanted. And we made thousands of these little cards that said like a specific thing on them. And you could search through our database or make your own. And what would happen is you would pick a card. And so you pick a couple cards. It would be like, I want to work on chords, scales, arpeggios, and maybe like music theory. And like I said, you could either be like, I need to know this scale and this chord, or I need to just do it generally. And the app would actually then build a practice routine for you based on how important each of those topics was. So it had a little fancy algorithm in there that would basically say, like, you gave everything in a level of how much you needed to work on that thing. So it's basically like, how good are you at this? 1 through 10. And if it was low, we would give you more time to work on it. If you were good at it, we'd give you a little less time to work on it. And we did
it. I'm using a similar app, which is a very. I mean, they're not really sponsoring this video, but I find this is really cool. It's called Bold Voice, and you don't need it for sure, but it is for non-English speakers.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So you kind of practice your own accent.
Yes,
to
yes.
Be more
okay.
fluent. So they test you at the beginning. They assess
I like it. Yeah.
Yes. And then they kind of, they tell you, so you need to work a little bit more on the TH. You have to work a little bit more on
that's
this
really cool.
thing.
I like that.
Yes. And then it kind of, the founder is actually from, I think she studied at Harvard, and
cool.
they interviewed me for kind of to give them feedback about the app because I was using that. And I kind of, it works in a similar way. So
that's really clever. That's exactly, well, and so I stole the concept from fitness apps.
Yeah. And then the thing was like, I think she worked at the beginning. This lady worked for Peloton.
Yep, and there you go. That's exactly what we were doing. We were doing basically the Peloton-y style, like tracking all your progress, getting badges and awards, and everything you did was like, we had so much data that you could look through for yourself. So you knew exactly what you're practicing, how many times you would even play that scale or chord, or like so much detailed data. And so I built it in at first for college students so that we would all have something to use to practice. And some of the kids at my school did like 1,000 or 2,000 practice sessions in the app while I was at school with them. It was crazy. But then as we started building it out, we realized that people were looking, like every time we brought it to a teacher, they were asking us, well, like, oh, can we also do like scheduling lessons and invoicing and payments, and can we also like share notes and reminders? A lot of what we do today at Muzie, but in sort of a more in-person, just standard lesson management tool, but with a heavy focus on practice. And that sort of developed for a couple of years. I think we did that for about 4 years. And eventually it sort of slowed down, started fizzling out, because honestly, we built it too big. There was just too many things it could do. It started to get very disorganized.
If it is not really kind of nice and oriented
to
one specific thing,
it became very unfocused.
And
because at first it was just a practice app, and then it needed this, and then that, and then that, and then this. And before we knew it, it was just unwieldy. So the nice thing, though, is that I have a dad who likes to build stuff and also loves music. So I, again, tapped into the resource, and I had this other idea for a flashcard app that it would listen to you play, and then tell you how good you did on whatever it was. So it'd be a
Yeah,
chord, a scale.
I had one of my guests, and maybe you can get in touch with them. You know,
Right.
you might share similar things. He built a website, and it's called Piano Gym, and then you can
Oh,
just
cool.
basically it's very similar to what you are saying. There are kind of flashcards with
Yep.
notes,
And then you play, and it just
and then
gives
as soon
you.
as you play, they tell you if it is right or wrong.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yeah, so we did that with chords, scales,
Yeah.
arpeggios, individual notes. So that was the idea for that one, and we called it Decks. It actually never ended up getting released, but we still have all of the stuff for it. So there are some plans to use that later on.
Yeah.
But basically, as we were working through Decks, I had this idea for Muzie, and that sort of, as we sort of sat around and really thought about like what was possible. And at the time when we were building Decks, microphones and phones were not very good. So it was really hard for them to pick up a chord. They could do a note really easily, but there were already tons of things that could identify an individual note. We were trying to get it to identify like a whole chord or a quick little passage.
And I think it is complicated as soon as you go into like instruments like piano, for example.
Absolutely.
Right? Where you have two hands, and then
exactly. Then you got the low bass notes, you got all the overtones and the resonance, and it's like, well, what was actually in the chord? And so the technology really wasn't there when we were messing with that. Nowadays it is pretty good, so we'll probably do that again, like I said, and build it into Muzie or something. But we started building Muzie after that, and that was the one that took off. And obviously thanks to the pandemic a little bit, but you know, once it got going,
it was a very nice intuition. Let's say that.
Yeah, you know, it's exactly. It is what it is, I guess. But the one thing is that for the pandemic, for the first 8 months, we gave Muzie away completely for free. Yeah. So everybody was welcome to use the entire platform at no charge. That was just to make sure that people could just make their business survive. Yeah. Everybody that was calling into me was just basically panicking that they couldn't. You know, they weren't going to have a business tomorrow morning. Yes. I was like, no. I was like, just get everybody online. I'll show you. Right. You know, so we did a lot of that kind of stuff.
And I think for many teachers, it was very difficult to suddenly switch to online lessons and have that tool that were not equipped. You didn't know anything about recordings, anything, and audio, macros, kind of thing.
Yeah, like any of it. So that was what we were. Fortunately, we had already been like when we were doing the original I Want to Practice, we even had a video platform in there as well. It was much more basic. It was funny now because basically the products are the reverse of each other. Yeah. But so you know, we were pretty well equipped to help people out because we, like I said, we'd been doing this all through 2019.
Yeah, I remember you were in a Facebook group time, like a Facebook group for what was it for music teachers?
Yeah, probably,
and pandemic, something like
that. Exactly, and so you know, we were sharing out Muzie to help people get online, and then we still have the free account, but we do now have like dozens and dozens of new features that are all inside of our pro accounts, but. The neat thing about it is that now it's really become an ecosystem where you can bring your students on. It doesn't matter if you're online or in person. The platform does work perfectly well for both of those. Yeah. And then everything you do is sort of contained into this one bubble. Makes it really easy for your students to get their materials. Makes it really easy for you to know where all the music stuff is, all the homework, all the assignments. Again, we have all the practice tools. We've got all the tracking. We've got all the badges and awards, and we brought all of the fun stuff in. We just
it's basically like a sort of Google Classroom, right? Yeah. So like they use Google Classroom now in a school to assign homework.
That's exactly. People describe us often as like Zoom plus Google Classroom or Zoom and Tonara or any of those kinds of things. Right. That's exactly what we are. We're a video conferencing platform, but we're also a lesson management assignment portal. And basically this is the second version. You know, to me, Muzie is just version 2 of I Want to Practice. Or version 3, really. And so, you know, it's one of those things where we've really had like 7 years of learning to figure out what it is people need and what teachers want. And
it's difficult because many platforms, they might offer something and not something else, and then you start switching around and then you know, do I need something more for invoices, or do I need more something for students to practice?
Exactly,
or do I need something for
and that's what we try to help, is that a lot of teachers are spending a lot of money on 5-6 different programs, where you can consolidate most of that right into one thing. And,
Yes.
the whole idea there is that for the teachers, it's no extra costs. Then you can just keep building your business, get more students, doesn't cost more. So, we want to empower, because I teach, I still teach guitar lessons. I use Muzie to do that. And, so I definitely know what it's like to be in the trenches and try to grow your business and get your studio. And I've seen platforms that will charge you more per student you have. Like if you have more students, you're charged more. It's like that stuff drives me crazy, because the whole point is that we want you to grow your business. We want to see, the biggest music schools in the world. Like, so there's no reason to try and encumber that.
Yes, and it's very difficult then for music teachers, because you want to offer the best to your students, but then obviously the resources are, you don't want to overcharge for your lessons just because you have to make up for the platforms, right? So it's kind of
and it's something nobody knew about 2 years ago. It's or didn't have to deal with as much, because 2 years ago you weren't being told, oh, you need Zoom, Dropbox, Google Drive, a good email provider, better Wi-Fi, a new camera, a microphone, a better computer. It's not like, wait, what?
What else do I need?
Like you're starting to write down the list. You're like, okay, I'm going to be broke by the end of this year.
Right, yes.
So, we try to really empower the idea of you don't need too much. Just as long as you got a decent, phone, iPad or computer, you'll be fine. And as long as your students can connect to the internet, then they'll be fine.
Yes, I know a lot of my colleagues who actually stopped teaching during the pandemic.
Absolutely. And to me, that's a shame. Like, that's a travesty. I don't want to see teachers retiring or stopping, or just because there's some technological hurdle. I think there's and in other countries too, obviously people got hit sort of in disproportionate ways. And I've seen, in smaller countries where teachers have very, very limited resources, that there was a huge population of teachers just retiring all at once. And then it's just like, well, hold on, we can't just lose the entire population of music teachers just because they don't want to figure out how to use Zoom and Skype.
And then another problem has been always that just a second, I'm starting hearing my echo again. Maybe adjust it a little bit.
Can you still hear it? I know.
Okay, yeah, should be fine. So many teachers had problems with invoicing, right? So we're used to, I don't know,
picking a check up at the door.
Right, I don't know, and then how do I switch to anything like more? How do I have a system? That's been a huge problem during the pandemic.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're here to solve. We don't do the billing specifically. My good friends over at Fonz do. And that's the one I personally use. But you're right. You have to change your whole business model. There's technology you've never used. There's tools you've never even thought about, even, you incorporating into your lessons, that now everybody on every forum is telling you got to do this, you got to try that, you got to do this. And it gets very, very overwhelming. So, as a company, what we really do is Muzie is a platform, but the Muzie community is really where I spend up like 99% of my day, is inside the Muzie Facebook and inside the chat support and doing the demos. Because for me, that's how I can connect with teachers and actually understand what the problems are, really walk you through. We offer multiple demos for the product. So if you want to do 2 or 3 sessions until you feel 100% confident with it, that's fine with us. Like, it's one of those things where we understand there's a huge learning curve to all new technology. So there's no point just being like, oh, hey, here's the thing, go figure it out. And if you can't, whatever. Like, that's not going to help anybody, So I think it's more important that we supply resources to the community at large than just technology, which is why we offer the free stuff. So that way you can just get in there and go without any hurdles.
Right. And I think what you might inspire teachers to do, music teachers in particular, is really kind of to treat their studios like a business. And that's what we fail most of the time. Right.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time.
Yes, because but nobody has taught us that. That's the thing. You go to college, you get a master's degree, a PhD in my case, but nobody has ever thought to really kind of teach me how to run a business. I had to learn it by myself, and some teachers don't have the time,
Nope.
don't think about that, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, it's the schooling until very, very recently. Like my year was 2016 that I did that course, or 2015. And that was the first year they had it. So it's only in the last 5 or 6 years that they've started even talking about this kind of stuff. And even then, it wasn't really like, when I got to really doing it, I was like, oh man, I was not like, they didn't cover any of this stuff. You know, the real nitty gritty stuff is what all of these kinds of, you know, courses, events, webinars, summits, all of that kind of stuff that is coming out of the pandemic is kind of nice to see, because there hasn't been much resources for teachers, private teachers especially. You know, sometimes public teachers will have school-based things, but even then, still limiting. But now I've seen dozens of new communities and dozens of new programs and courses and things that are working towards teaching teachers and kind of working on the business end of things, you know. We were just on the Expand Online Summit last week, which was a great summit that's free to attend. And the nice thing about that is it's all these different speakers talking about the different, so it was like basically technology was one of the topics, marketing was one of the topics, back end bookkeeping was one of the topics, and then just like general administration and courses and things like that. So it's like each of the days you cover those things, and it's nice to see those are starting to pop up more and more. But for a long time, there was very, very, very little out there. And I do think the pandemic sort of spurred that, you know, to happen a little bit faster, because everyone kind of came together to be like, okay, what are we doing? And then, you know, the few of us who had already been sort of in the trenches before the pandemic were like, hey, we can help. Like, this isn't new to us. We've been doing this forever. So, you know, it's funny because I meet teachers all the time who are like, oh, I've been online for 10 years. They're like, didn't even notice the pandemic as far as like my business. I just kept going.
Web Piano Academy, for example, was already online before the pandemic. I had not used that in the way that I'm using that now, or in the way that I was using that during the pandemic. I was uploading just lessons for my students and small clips, you know, what the exercise you have to do here, the video. But I had already that set up, and because in Buffalo, there's a lot of snow, and at times we had to miss lessons. So I had already started using Zoom and FaceTime and all those things to teach students online when they couldn't come. So instead of missing a lesson, let's do that online. So I had already set up those things. I had already set up a billing system so that, you know, I bill my students once per semester, and I'm done with that, you know, online. Yes, and then I don't need to kind of worry about missing lessons, make up lessons. So everything is scheduled and kind of, you know, I'm flexible with them, and they don't need to worry, you know, about anything, you know. But I know many colleagues that didn't even know. They still don't know that such things exist, that they can run their business better, you know, in a more effective way, and they're actually making a living, a decent living, you know, with their teaching. Because why not? I mean, we provide
provide a great service.
I mean, what do you want more? Like, I think in one of the last videos we made, it was about listening to music, why music is important. And at one point, it's like, can you imagine a world without music?
Right?
How?
I have no interest in being there.
Right. Yes. So and it's kind of so we provide that great service, and we really need also to have you know, great resources. Yes.
No, I agree. And though I think it's one of those things, though, that the more teachers have been taking themselves seriously. Like, I have case studies on top of case studies now of teachers, especially using Muzie, that have gone from teaching one private lesson and then driving to the next private lesson to doing small group classes 3 or 4 days a week, and they're making twice as much money and they're working half as much. And, you know, so there's a massive amount of growth that you can have when you when you utilize the technology that's around. But like you said, the number one thing people say to me is, oh, I didn't know you guys existed, until someone said this, or someone posted this, or someone did this, you know. And it's like, it's funny because, you know, at the same, we're always like, well, how do we get in front of more people? But at the same time, I don't think it really matters, in the sense that, like, there's always going to be a big swath of people out there who are like, oh, I've never heard of this. I didn't know
Yes.
this was a thing. And
Right.
I think that, it is our job, your job, sort of the people who are making podcasts and
I
content.
must say that you did a great job in really proposing, your company everywhere. Because I know that during the pandemic you were just really kind of very active in
Yeah.
kind of offering services and really promoting that. And one of the mentors at my class, at the business class at UB, said, well, if you never propose your product and
Right.
you never offer that to anybody, nobody's going to buy it.
Yep.
Because,
I learned
yeah,
my lesson. I've like I said, I've failed in business multiple times now. So,
yeah,
that's the thing with out practice. I classify it as a failure at the end of the day. It
yeah,
did have to basically, we just shut it down. It wasn't working. So, from that, and then the Dex project that never got released, that's another good failure.
yeah.
And those, though, it's one of the most cliche thing on earth, but it's so painfully true that you really do learn the best from your failures. And
Hmm.
for me, it's just as business goes, it's the same as teaching. Like if you do a lesson and you just explain something horribly, I remember this isn't even that long ago. I was teaching major scales, right? The
Yes,
most like how many times have you taught major scales? Like you know it inside out and backwards.
yeah,
I did such a bad job that even at the end of the lesson, I was like, please ignore everything I just said. I was like, don't even worry about it. I was like, I will, like, you honestly don't even pay for this lesson. I would feel bad charging you for me just confusing you for 30 minutes. So, you know, but the next week, and after, I was like, okay, now I know what I was supposed to be telling you. It's not like I didn't know what I was doing. It's just, sometimes you mess up and that's life. And
yes,
with business, it's the same thing. I built products I thought were going to be great and revolutionary, and they fall flat on their face. And then,
yes,
you even like with Muzie, the intent was slightly different at first, but once we made that switch, it became very clear of what
right.
we were supposed to be doing. But it's funny, you have to do those failures to know what it is you need to do right the next time, and
Yeah.
you really can only stumble through. So just
Yeah,
gotta keep
think
going.
about Elon Musk and the
Yeah,
explosion
any of them. Yeah, think about
of
any
this
rockets.
first rocket.
Like
Yes.
that's the thing. Think about any spaceship company ever. They're the perfect example of this because those things blow up and it's like $20 million or more, worth of material just exploding in your face. And then they turn to each other and go, okay, well, so how can we improve that? What went wrong? They don't cry. I mean, they might for a minute, but then they'll run over and be like, well, why did this happen? And if you're not willing, and like with business or in anything, it's pivoting. It's like with the pandemic, if teachers were able to pivot and take their
Mhm.
business online, like I said, I've seen teachers who used to make pennies and are now making pretty good money and they're working half as much. And,
Right,
it's like, who doesn't want that? And
right.
it's not some special secret Tony Robbins $50,000 course of excellence or
Yeah.
something. Like, it's pretty straightforward, really. Like, if you can get yourself on the computer.
You know what it is? Like I think it is really the attitude, right?
Yes.
So even when you play, let's say that you
Right.
play a piece and you make a mistake, if you keep just like
100%.
playing,
Right.
ignore the mistake and say,
Yeah.
okay, fine, it was fine, it will be fine next time, right?
Yeah.
If you never fix that mistake,
Yeah.
if you never correct that, if you never
It's
kind of think about
perfect.
correcting, then you're going to
Yeah.
just make that again. I mean, you can expect
Absolutely.
that.
And as we know, all you'll ever do is get really good at making that mistake.
Yes, yes,
You'll get really good at it.
yeah,
You'll have mastered making a mistake. It is funny, but you're right. That's how, and I think obviously overwhelm was a big part of 2020 was just trying to keep people's boots on. But now I've noticed in especially this year, it's more of people when they come to us for demos or interest in the product or whatever we're working on. Is less about I need this because I don't like my business is like help, and more like okay, so what else is out here? How can I expand my business? What other opportunities are there? And I like that because it's a little bit more of the inquisitive. Like, okay, what is available now? Now that the dust is sort of settled and I understand the online is
right.
a permanent fixture, because I laugh when anyone is like, oh, I'm never going to offer online lessons. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know why you would willingly cut 50% of your own revenue potential, but whatever, like you run your own business. You're
I
the
mean,
way you want to
it
run.
is different, and obviously, then we're talking about music, so certain
Totally,
things obviously in person works differently than
100%.
online. It's kind of a, but I've noticed also that you can combine both things and
Absolutely.
say, okay, so we might have both things, and we
Yeah.
might have both advantages,
That's,
right?
well, that's exactly what I try to promote is hybrid teaching. And that's why
Yeah.
Muzie is built for in-person lessons specifically and online lessons, because we wanted. I mean, besides, I teach online obviously just because of Muzie. I'm busy, but if I know almost most of the teachers I know are if not now, are planning on doing some kind of hybrid teaching in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If they're currently still online, they're like, well, I might do a summer camp where we all get together and we do a summer camp, but maybe there would be 3 or 4 kids who are online because I have students in like Texas or Florida or something.
Yes.
And so we've seen even hybrid lessons in real time. Like 2 kids will be online, 2 kids will be in person,
Mm-hmm.
and the lesson will be taking place. All the content just goes directly out to those students automatically. So they have digital copies, and then the students the next week will actually rotate if they can,
Right.
or if not, if they're far away, they'll just stay online each week. And they can
Right.
still participate, they can still play games, they can still work on all the material, and they'll get
Right.
all the assignments and all that kind of stuff. So it really does build a much, much more cohesive environment than what I think people might be expecting when they
Yeah.
first think about online. They're like, oh no, like I'm just gonna get on a Zoom call and try to like show them like how am I even gonna like fit the guitar on the screen? And you're like, no, like you're actually overthinking it. You're like, just sit down, make sure they can see your face and your hands. Like, don't worry about perfect anything. And then there's a million tools that we've got here for you to make sure that you can do that. You can record yourself.
I don't know if you know anything about the concept of incremental learning, but it's based, basically you teach small thing and then you
absorb
expand.
that thing.
Right, and expand that small thing into another small thing with another small thing, and that is how you teach online,
right?
Because online you have to do that.
Yes.
In-person lessons, at times you miss that because we can do this, and then also this and this, right? And then you give too much information.
Yes.
So then
and you walk away with like,
I don't remember. I remember just the last thing you said.
Right, that's it. And the student gets home and they've got like a couple pieces of paper and they're looking at them like, oh man, what did they tell me to do here? And there's like some scribbled notes on the side and they're like, I think I'm supposed to do the first page. I don't know. And then they do what they do and then they show up and try their best, Whereas like with online or even with just some technology included, you can record your in-person classes. And so you could send the student a file at the end of their in-person lesson that is a recording of that lesson. So if they have any questions, they can just rewatch it. It's like that was never available before, I
wish I would have had it.
Yeah, right.
It happened to me. I went to after my degree in Italy. I always went like once a month. I flew to Germany from the southern of Italy to Germany, and then I kind of took this kind of lesson with a professor in Karlsruhe. And so I flew back. I completely forgotten what she said. Then I flew back the next time and I said, oh, she had already said that to me. And I wish I would have had that, right? Because I would have,
right?
A lot of hours of practicing.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. That's part of why we did all this is that when I just selfishly was thinking about what did I want as like from my lessons. I had an amazing guitar teacher from age like 12 to 18 or something, so I would have killed to have those recordings. I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of literally thousands of lessons. So thousands of hours of material that he's given to me that now I have a couple of good memories here and there of but no concrete like, oh, on this lesson we did this. And like, I can't remember any of that stuff, but it would be so cool to go back and watch it all. Because there's so many times where I'm like, well, I know we talked about this. I wonder, like, what did we actually do there? This is, 15 years ago now. Like, I can't really remember what I was doing when I was 12. So it's like, that kind of stuff I think is fantastic. And we have students on Muzie and previously on I Want to Practice who have like years of practice data like tracking, so they can be like, oh, well, in 2020 I did this much, in 2021 I did this much, in 2022 I've done this much, and they can see exactly how they're progressing and what things they've been working on. And to me, like, imagine 10 years, 15 years from now, and like they've got kids and they're like, oh, well, I've actually got this entire curriculum of material that you can take a look at if you'd like to start, and we can get you a teacher, and then you can have your own, it's like, I have a literal library down there in the corner of books and materials that my teachers have given me over the years.
Yeah.
Huge binders full of stuff. And it's like, but that's it. That's all I've got from, 15 years of music lessons, where I hope what we can provide is students having videos, recordings, play-alongs, everything.
Because then at the end, the music lessons is about this small thing that you correct in the lesson. It is one, maybe this is one small thing, like wrong chord, wrong hand position, wrong fingerings, I don't know, phrasing.
Tiny details.
Right, the tiny details, and you can remember them by looking at the score, obviously. Right?
Even when you write the notes in, like, you as the teacher are like, yeah, of course I said this as the student. You're
I wrote it here, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I didn't even see it. That's what you meant. I didn't know that, And so, like, with like assignment tools that we have, like, you can write out detailed descriptions of everything you want the student to work on, and then send the files along with those instructions. And then when they go to practice, they have that right there. So permanently, they know exactly what you wanted them to do. And it's like, that kind of thing is just so much more convenient for your students. It makes their lives better. And the thing people forget, or like we were saying with business, that maybe not forget or just don't think about, is the happier your students are. I mean, this is going to sound so obvious. But happier your students are, the longer they're likely to stay with you, which means that you're going to get more money from each student that you have.
And I think many students really quit because of that, because of the lack of clarity. They feel like I'm not progressing enough.
Right? They don't know what they're supposed to be doing each week. If you give an assignment that's just like, oh, just practice this thing, jam out on that stuff and have some fun. And then they come back and they're like, I don't really understand what I'm doing, and there's no continuity between all of your lessons, then they're not.
And also in the case of younger students, right? The parents, especially if the parents are not present in the lesson, they don't really know what the students are doing. They imagine they go there and they will become concert pianists just because they
just because they took lessons.
Right, they're taking lessons, and the teachers would take care of that, and then they hear something at home and then they don't know what they're doing. It's like, maybe you quit. Instead of
I was just thinking, you just reminded me of when I was younger taking lessons. I would come home from the lesson, and my lessons were Mondays at 9 p.m. And I used to drive. My mom used to drive me out and drive me back before I could drive.
It was very early.
Then when I got a car when I was in high school, I would drive out. And then me and my teacher, I was the last lesson of the day. Yeah. So often we would but I was supposed to leave at 10. Often I wasn't leaving until like midnight or like 1 o'clock in the morning, because we'd be in the basement. Like, he had a recording studio where he did the lessons and everything. And we'd just be like recording stuff or listening to music or like playing games or like just messing around. And it was really funny because I'd get home and my parents were like, so what do you actually do in your lessons? And I'm like, well, we do a lot of music theory. We do a lot of really technical stuff in the beginning, but then we just once the hour is up, we just listen to music and goof around, play with guitars and stuff. And it's like, but that is the kind of stuff that we've made it easier, because my dad would always be like, so what'd you do in the lesson? I'd try to show him or explain, and it was always like, you're never really going to understand. It's not going to make sense. It'd be so much easier if I could be like, well, here's my assignment. You can just see sort of like I'm working on.
It's almost like I had 2 of my kids went to a school in Germany, and when they came back home, I always asked them, okay, what did you do today in school?
Right.
I was in the playground. We ate snacks, and that was it. I was like,
okay, you're actually doing anything over there, And especially with music lessons, because they're private and expensive, it's one of those things where parents probably should be checking in to make sure you're not just paying, $40 an hour or $50, $60, $70 an hour, and your kids are just, doing nothing. I like having that accountability system there, but for everybody, the students have it, the teachers have it, the parents have it. And I
Yeah.
think overall, you just create better quality lessons. Because at the end
Right.
of the day, that's the only thing I care about.
And then,
We
I mean, I trust that my colleagues would teach lessons, right? Like,
right,
you go to a lesson and the kids would receive a lesson. But I also seen teachers who, I don't know, like they don't know, oh, what can we do today? Sort of thing. Right? So if you have the pressure of like the lesson being recorded, or the parents
yeah,
wanting come to see what the kids have to do, then you also create that kind of a relationship of trust between the
yeah,
parents and the teacher. So as a teacher, then you're doing your lesson and the parent will trust you because eventually they can check, right?
right,
And then
exactly,
you
exactly.
look at
Because
it.
like it's not like they're logging in at the end of every lesson and
No,
re.
no, no. But
They check it like
yes,
once a year, to be honest. You know,
right. Yes.
like or once every few months. But that's exactly it. Is it builds the accountability for both of you, and of course with online lessons, for teachers, it's also a nice protection layer. That if
Yeah.
you have it recorded, so if anything weird happens, you have
Yeah.
video proof of what went down.
Right.
Because that's
Right.
always something, unfortunately, that you
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to keep an eye
Yeah.
on. But the nice
Yes.
thing for everybody involved, though, is that there is that transparency. There's that
Yes.
extra layer of transparency that makes it just more comfortable, and like it's the convenience, it's the fact that you can still have a high quality lesson and be online and do
I
all
think
of this is
yeah,
pretty cool.
it also improves the quality of
Yes,
your teaching because then you really need to use your time in a
absolutely,
way, and in a way that is like effective. And then
absolutely.
on the other hand, you also can watch yourself, right,
Yeah,
teaching and say, okay, now I did this with my student didn't understand a thing.
yeah,
Okay, what did I do wrong?
right,
Right, ask yourself that question. Is that
yeah,
mostly it is not the student's fault, it's
right.
how we communicate what.
A
Right.
100%. It's actually really funny. I was doing a lesson. This was not like maybe a week ago, with one of my youngest students, and he could see that I was getting frustrated, but I was getting frustrated at myself.
Yes.
Because I was just like everything I tried to say was wrong. I just kept stumbling over my own words and I was just like
I can
super.
imagine you would do that, but
All right. Yeah, so I just wasn't with it really, to be fair. And
yeah.
but he took it as I was frustrated at him. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like, no, like let me explain. Like when you don't understand something, that's my fault. Like that's never your fault. Like that is
Right.
me being a bad teacher, not you being a bad student. Like you're here paying attention. I'm
Right.
just clearly not doing this very well. And he
Yes.
was even laughing. He was like, oh, he's like, I've never had a
That's
teacher
cool.
ever say that it was their fault. Like, okay, but I think that like you have to have that humility to like, be able to be effective is willing to learn from your own mistakes, like we said with anything, and
Right.
and
Yes.
it's all that kind of stuff. It all applies into when you're actually in the lesson and teaching,
Yes.
and the
I don't know,
higher quality.
if you, yeah, so when you want to kind of your students to improve, you look at that kid, that one student you have in front
Yeah,
of you, or even an adult. Even
right,
adults have a kind of it is mostly. I mean, I don't believe in people being smarter than
right.
somebody else, or kind of I'm not smart
It's
just
right.
because.
There's
Right?
like natural, like
Naturally smart.
yeah, yeah,
No, like well, you have certain background. You
right,
have a collection of information and skills
yeah,
and tools that has been given to you over time, right?
yeah,
And sometimes those tools and information and skills are missing for whatever reason.
yep,
Okay, so if I have a student who can recognize the fingers of the hand, it
right.
doesn't matter how many times I will say, use finger number 1, use finger number 2, use
Yeah,
finger. Well, I don't recognize my fingers. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
right.
That's my problem. My first problem, that you get frustrated with the numbers.
Absolutely.
Then so that's the humility that you were talking
Yes.
about. Just like to say, okay, what is the student not understanding in this
Right.
moment?
And
Okay,
how do
it's
I
just
do you
yes.
yeah.
I had a student who she did not she couldn't recognize the C after
Mm,
a year of piano lessons, but that was her problem. Okay, so if
right,
I don't recognize the note on the keyboard, it doesn't matter what I play. We always
right.
start from the wrong key, right?
Yeah,
So like you step back and you say, okay,
Yeah.
How can I make that clear to her?
Yeah.
And so you work on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the one thing why my guitar teacher growing up was so good, because I had like 5 or 6 guitar teachers in like a year or two. First, I was like every few weeks I had a different guitar teacher. It was really weird. Like the school I was at just kept changing.
Was it your the school was changing?
Yeah, the school just kept changing the
Okay.
teacher on me. And so I'd have a different teacher like every month or two. And it was like, this is really weird. And so the problem was, is as a kid, I was pretty good at like playing fast. Like, but because that was just like particularly like I wanted to shred. Like I was a heavy metal kid. Like I just wanted to play fast. So I was really, the problem is it actually made it look like I was better than I was, because I could play really fast, but it was more like a party trick than anything. I didn't actually know how chords were formed. I had no idea what scales I was playing. I had no idea how to actually compose anything. I just knew how to play fast. And at 15, like it was impressive to see this 15-year-old like ripping through the guitar. But then when you were like, hey, so let's jam in blues, A minor, I'd be like, I
don't know what it is. Sorry.
Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then being jumped around to all these different teachers, there's a lot of like, hey, what do you want to learn today? And I'd be like, that song and this song and that riff and this solo. And then by the time I got to like my like good solid teacher, and to be fair, the other guys were good teachers. I just never had them long enough to like have that longevity with them. But when I've had that one consistent teacher, I mean, he patched all the holes. Like he was like, oh, hold on. Like you should know how your major scales are formed. Like he's like the fact you can play like this, but you don't know that is really weird. He's like, so we're going back to the baby steps. He's like, you're gonna hate it for a while, but trust me, you'll appreciate this in the future. And thank you, Eric, I do. So, it's one of those things where, that kind of thing. I think it's that level of teaching. You have to be self-aware. And those are the kinds of things that I don't know if you can teach that into people, like just being a good teacher. But there's definitely some advice and some tips and tricks that we can hand over, and some ways of making things a little bit easier for yourself that might, kind of make that work for you.
Yes. Yeah. Of course. I've read that you wrote a book. What's the book about? Tell me.
I'm part of a book called The Power of Why. And so Gloria St. Germain, she runs a company called Ultimate Music Theory. They're a really cool company up in Canada. And here, one sec, I've got it right here.
Sure.
So this is the book. And so it's why 23 musicians crafted a course. And so we're one of the sections in it. Weirdly, I just opened to the page. So we're one of the chapters in here, and it's basically our story of why we even built Muzie. A lot of what we were talking about today, all on the side of just trying to help teachers figure out what to do, like because we were seeing a lot of people in the market too offering advice that really was not great. Just trying to be helpful, or maybe I don't know, maybe a little snake oils salesman-y, but it felt like people were taking advantage of the pandemic and the situation. And so like our why is that we wanted to sort of get in there with the real information and the things that could actually help people. And Glory put this book together, and it's a whole bunch of people from all over the world who have done that. It's a whole series of books actually. And we're one of the sections in this one. So that was really fun. And then so we're actually also working on our own sort of little book about how to teach online effectively.
That's good.
Yeah, probably be out sometime in the fall. Not sure. It's one of those projects. It's sort of always ongoing. But because we just want to sort of put together a lot of what it is we talk about all the time. From the gear and technology to best practices to things you might not have thought about and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Awesome. So, and that's your next project. How do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh yeah. So it's a good question. So, I mean, honestly, this might just sound incredibly arrogant, but I want to build an empire, honestly. Like I want to build the music conglomerate that has never existed before, but in a way, because I feel like what happens a lot is big corporations slide into these spaces. Like you get Google Classrooms. That's cool, but that's not really for musicians, And I feel like musicians are always pushed to the side. So for me, I want to build Muzie into something that's massive. I mean, way past just the teaching platform. I mean,
Yes.
I'm working on a card game of my own, just like a music theory game. Maybe one day we get into like curriculum and content publishing. One thing I want to do that is on the side projects is actually some VR stuff, and have like a VR classroom and a virtual practice space, so you can have virtual reality lessons and things like that.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, so those are the kinds of things that I want to build into. Just having bigger sort of infrastructure for teachers, so that one thing I would love to do is put together a foundation. And my idea for that would be that like teachers donate an hour of their time, and then we go and find schools and students who are underprivileged or need lessons, and then partner them with incredible teachers.
I had a few people inquiring for free lessons on Instagram, because they're from India, Pakistan.
Right. That's the thing. So like if you're from countries that might not have a resource that's available for you, there's no local teacher, there's no good online infrastructure. That's kind of something I think would be really cool. Is if we've got thousands of teachers that we could ask, hey, do you want to give an hour of your time to donate to? And then we could go find schools and organizations and people that are in need and partner them up with that teacher and get more people to learn music. That's my goal, is to get more people to learn music. So for the next 10 years, we're just going to build the biggest machine that we can get out. I mean, honestly, I'd love to have a university at some point. Like, I'd love to have an institute that taught all of this stuff.
That's beautiful.
I feel like I feel like colleges don't do that. I feel like if you had an institute where people could go for, even if it was just secondary learning, after college, that was really how to be a music teacher effectively in a business, and any of that kind of stuff, I think would be phenomenal. But I do love playing with the technology, so VR and all of the kind of fancy new cutting edge stuff. I really want to see what happens with that.
Let's see. Well, I will be here to see your progresses, and then maybe in a year I will interview you again, and we will kind of see how you went from there towards this kind of a big institute, which would be really kind of necessary. I think it would be kind of a great idea.
I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that, like I said, it's all started. Everyone's but I think it would be amazing, or even if just some of the bigger institutions really took this up as a challenge, to provide that kind of education. But if we can be involved in any way, that would be awesome. I just want to see more people play music, honestly. The more good music in the world is all I really care about.
So. It's all we need. Yes, really. It's just that we don't need any kind of words.
No, it doesn't, because I don't need people to make more products. I don't need more plastic bottles. I don't need more widgets and gadgets and printed stuff. But I definitely need more music. And because that's the thing, we can make as much of that, and it never harms the environment, never harms people. It's literally a free resource that everybody can enjoy. It's the perfect thing. So I'll happily focus my attention on that.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for being with us today. And I really wish you the best of luck with your projects. And so it was nice. Just having this conversation with you.
Absolutely.
I will post the link to Muzie just on the description in this video, and then whoever is interested can get in touch with you. Yes.
Yeah, if they have any questions, our chat support is always real people, and often 99% of the time it's me you'll talk to you. So if you want to say hi, just go to me.
He's a real person. Yes.
Yeah, it's a real person every time. You'll see my little logo. You'll see my face in the corner if it's me. So you can just say you can just say hi if you want to chat, anything like that.
Yeah.
We're all real people over there, so no robots.
Yes. Thank you so much again, and we'll kind of keep in touch.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you.
Bye.